The biggest thing seems to be that when you have a child who stays behind, one or two children who stay behind and who help run the farm, many times, not always, but many times, they kind of give up on the things that they wanted to pursue. And then you've got the kids who go off and pursue, get married, have kids, get their career in order, and then they come back. And I think that's probably one of the biggest struggles that I see.
I would say for those of you listening to this who are worried or concerned about the lack of the ability to share feelings and talk about what's really going on, that you have a choice to get yourself in front of someone like you, Colleen, who's an ag-informed therapist, to learn how to talk things out and work on some new coping skills and better communication strategies. Or you have a choice just to kind of say, oh, I hope it works out, which I think is such a conflict avoidance and procrastination move that way too many farmers default to. Welcome to the Farm Family Harmony podcast. I'm Elaine Fraze, Farm Family Coach, here with another episode full of transition tips, tactics, and sometimes hard truths to get harmony on your farm. Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Farm Family Harmony podcast. And harmony is a key word today because I have the privilege of speaking to Colleen Stegenga, who is a therapist from Mitchell, South Dakota, and in the process of moving back to her family farm. So, Colleen, why I'm so excited to have you on today is we've entitled this one, and I keep flipping the titles around, but how a therapist can help a farm family with the succession process. And what makes my heart sing is in over 30 years of doing this work, I'm seeing more and more families say, you know what, Elaine, we need to go to a therapist first and deal with some of the emotional issues, and then that will make our coaching facilitation for transition way better. So, Colleen, how did you get called to this work, and where are you today? Just give us a little intro.
Oh my goodness. I got called to this work kind of in a roundabout way. When I was in my 30s, I was working at a very high poverty elementary school, and the principal there gave me leeway. Like, as long as I got my work done, I became the unofficial social worker. I I had never seen things until I got in that position, and I just didn't realize how many families struggle. Um,
Mhm.
I think we had like 90% of our population was on free and reduced lunch, and kids would show up, like they would pick up and move in the middle of the night and then just show up at our school the next day with no belongings, like no winter coat, no boots. I had not experienced that, and so I kind of I took that and ran. We have some really wonderful, generous people in the Sioux Falls community and businesses, and I was, rounding up supplies and coats and sometimes groceries because,
Yep.
they would go weekends without food, like before those snack packs started. Um, so it was in that position that the principal encouraged me. She's like, you need to go back to school. Like you need to be doing work like this. And I thought, no, I'm too old. I'm not going to go back now. We're raising our kids. And well, it didn't seem to, something in me didn't go away. And so then, there was a night when I couldn't sleep and I was just looking on the internet, and an ad had popped up for a university in Minneapolis for social work. And I hadn't really considered a social work degree. At one time, I had considered going back to school. I wanted to be a school counselor, I thought, but that didn't pan out. Neither one of the state universities would give me, they wouldn't allow me, they wouldn't accept me. My undergrad GPA was too low. And so I just kind of put it on the back burner. But the social work, that ad, it must have been meant to be, because then the next morning I talked with my husband and he said, well, yeah, I think you should apply. And so I applied and
Wow.
I got accepted at all the universities, um, and then as luck would have it, my home state university opened the program in Sioux Falls, so I didn't have to commute.
Yay.
And so that was huge. And then work allowed me to take 1 day off a week so that I could attend all my classes. And yeah, and I ended up going to work then after I graduated. I went to work for a community mental health agency, and then I wasn't quite sure, where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do, but a colleague had convinced me to, well, let's go open our own practice. And so this is my 8th year of running my practice. And so, I mean, all along, I guess this is where I was supposed to be. I love
Yes.
working families. I love helping
Mm.
families and people get to where they need to be.
Well, and I suspect you have a pretty strong work ethic too, because you grew up on a, would you call it a farm or a ranch, or what kind of what
Yeah,
kind of
I
farm
grew up
did you
on a
grow up
dairy
on?
farm. So, you had milkings twice a day. Luckily, they didn't make me do the early morning shift very often. They took pity on me, but I did the night shift and then I took care of the babies usually.
Mhm.
So lots of bottle feeding and teaching them how to drink and cleaning their pens. I mean, all the things.
So we
So,
would uh,
yeah.
so we would call you an ag-informed therapist. You know,
Yes.
you've already,
Yes.
you don't need to have a cultural dissertation on what agriculture's like. You've actually got lots of lived experience. And Colleen, just so listeners know, because we have actually dairy farmers listening to this right now who are working in the barns, and their mom has given the podcast to them, because I know this dairy farmer out in the Eastern Seaboard who is handing out the podcast like candy to her
Yes.
employees and to her kids. So your website is embracing change cs.com.
Mhm. Yep.
What are the changes that you're seeing in the emotions of the families that you work with? What is typically
Mm,
coming up now? What would your clients be
um,
coming from?
we are seeing grief. Grief is probably the biggest one, and fear, and then there's a lot of guilt. I'd say those are
Uh,
the top 3 that I'm seeing. Um,
is
y and I hear lots of rumblings just, like, within the community, like, "Oh, yeah, the ones that are supposed to retire, they don't wanna step down or they don't wanna let go, and we never get to try my ideas. It always has to be their way." And I mean, I see both sides. I really do. But I think, for that older generation, that person that's looking at stepping back, that's all they've known for how many
right.
years. And so that has to be, I think, the first part of the puzzle that gets addressed. We,
So
we have to
grief isn't
name
just
it.
about when, yeah, so naming it as grief and loss, but
Yeah.
grief and loss, in my experience of coach, is not just about somebody dying.
Mm-mm.
And you're talking about the older farmers who need to step back without stepping away. They're losing their identity, or they're losing their sense of meaning and purpose. What are they grieving? How does that, the farm family identity, how is that different than a typical business transition?
Well, okay, I'll use my family as an example. I have a brother mid-70s who this is his life. He's given everything for this life. He does have a degree as an electrician, but he stepped away and he pursued this for his whole livelihood. And
Working
they
life.
still milk cows
Hmm.
and they still run beef cattle and they still do crop farming, and it's just the 2 brothers. There's nobody else helping, and they don't ever get a vacation. They don't ever take a break. And the rest of us siblings are like, "Don't you wanna slow down? Don't you want to go do things that you've never gotten to do?" And he said, "Well, what would I do? This is all I know." And so I think for many farmers in that position, this is all they know. And so how do you begin to find a different identity that isn't wrapped around the farmland or the heritage piece that's been in the family for so many years? It's a bit of a struggle.
So what do you recommend that they start thinking about, having something to look forward to, or how would you, counsel those farmers to get them to take an assessment of what they truly need and want?
Oh my goodness. Like I said, the first thing that has to happen is that farmer who's looking at making the big change, whether it's handing it off to the next generation or selling it, to the neighbor, um, he has to feel that somebody's listening to him and that somebody's hearing what he's
Is
saying.
respected? Mhm.
Exactly. Everything that they're leaving behind. If you are an owner of a business in town, you sell the business or, you maybe gift it to the next generation, but then you go about life. You don't continue driving by the business but for a farmer, it's a little bit different because that land, I mean, you've been privy to that land for how many years? You don't just stop going in.
Decades.
Exactly. And so it's a hard logistic to wrap your head around. So once we can at least get that farmer feeling like, okay, somebody hears me, somebody gets what I'm feeling, then it's like, okay, well, let's talk a little bit about some of those characteristics that made you the farmer that you are. And for some, it's easier than others to, identify. Um, but we'll come up with those characteristics or those traits. And then from there, okay, well, here's an interesting tidbit. Even if you're not farming that land, you still possess those characteristics. You still have those traits that make you who you are. So is
Mhm.
there another realm that you could use those characteristics? That you're
Yeah.
you're not losing yourself. You still are who you are. The scenery is going to be changing. The responsibilities are going to be changing.
And I can see that the man who's mechanically inclined in doing a men's shed or a group
Oh,
activity in their small town to help people
mm,
even with basic handiwork and mechanics and something like that. Or I know a lot of, farmers whose roles have changed who, hop back on the equipment and help out during the busy season, but then they go golfing
yeah,
or play baseball all summer.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, and that's a nice mix too because you're getting a little bit of that relaxation and getting to explore how some of the other people live life, but yet you get to come back in those good busy times, right?
Mhm.
I always thought, I
You
mean,
mentioned, Colleen, you
no, go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
I always thought those were the
You
fun times.
mentioned yeah, the fun well, and
Hustle and the
again,
bustle,
what's your
right?
definition of fun, right? For a
Yeah.
lot of farmers, fun is being out there every day and being close to the land and taking care of their livestock, and that's fun, and, like, the comment that you made from your brother, "What would I do? This is all I've ever known."
Hmm.
And that I think speaks to some fear, um, and I've asked a lot of aging farmers, "What are you afraid of?" And many times they'll say, "Elaine, quite frankly, I've never told anybody this before, but what I'm actually afraid of is that the next generation is gonna fail and lose the whole farm."
Yeah. I hear
Which
that
is
too.
not really a valid fear if they've had lots of experience and if there's lots of management, collaboration, and good decision making.
Right. And I do feel today that there are a lot of um, opportunities for that collaboration. Granted, now I've just been back in this area for about 6 months, and so I'm still learning, all of the opportunities that are available to the farmers and their children. But I mean, there's lots of boards and committees that you can become a part of, and
Yeah,
extension programs. So I feel like definitely there are ways to help if things are a struggle.
right.
So,
So what is how does the family dynamic play out between two siblings in succession? The most common one that I would run up against is typically two brothers, but can have brothers and sisters.
mm,
How can you as a therapist help them find less struggle in that dynamic?
you know, um, the biggest thing seems to be that when you have a child who stays behind, one or two children who stay behind and who help run the farm, Many times, not always, but many times, they kinda give up on the things that they wanted to pursue, and, then you've got the kids who go off and pursue, get married, have kids, get their career in order, and then they come back, and I think that's probably one of the biggest struggles that I see. Um, how do you as the parent who's trying to figure out the transition piece, how do you make things fair so that everybody's feelings are okay, especially for the one who gave up everything and
The
stayed back?
delayed, yeah,
Yep.
delayed gratification.
But then the other one who legally still has a right to an inheritance, it's a very fine line. And a lot of times too, it doesn't equate to fighting about the land and the money. It comes down to maybe things that were never spoken and personality traits that maybe get in the way, or maybe one of the siblings feels that the other sibling was favored
Yes.
by the parents or heard things from the parents. And so I think then that calls for spending some individual time with each of the children to again give them that opportunity to go ahead and express what they're feeling. Um, and then also giving them the opportunity to identify, like, guess what? You aren't that 8-year-old child anymore. Things are different, and is there a new way to look at the relationship between you and your sibling? I mean, it's
So
not gonna go easy, but that's how I would start.
and the other thing too, Colleen, that you've just portrayed in your therapy approach would be to help people put things into perspective and possibly put themselves in the other person's shoes,
Mhm.
which is a very good positive conflict behavior, right?
Right, right. It's a tough spot.
So so the other thing you mentioned the word right to inheritance, and I think for those people on the podcast who haven't gone to YouTube yet to Farm Family Coach on YouTube, you will find an hour-long presentation called Finding Fairness in Farm Transition. And one of my foundations is financial transparency, attitudes towards money, what your intent is, and what roles and responsibilities you're going to have for the farm to go
Mhm.
forward. But I think a lot of people um, have assumptions about what they deserve or what their right is as being a child in that family. So
Right.
what do you think? How can you help families get ready for those tough conversations, Colleen? Is it to give them, like you say, a space to be seen and to be heard first, to work out strong feelings and strong emotions before you get to family dynamic conversations?
That's where we would start. But I think for people who are maybe in that pre-planning stage, like they know they've got sons or daughters coming up that have expressed interest, um, start having the conversations early. Like, start thinking more so about legacy versus your assets, your money. Like, what does this mean? Especially for the generation that's looking at handing the baton over, so to speak. What do you want your farm to stand for? What do you want it to mean when you're no longer in charge? Um, what did the land teach you?
Mm,
And how do you want your kids to then carry that forward? You know, and so I think just giving them questions to think about. Um, and then questions also, for the younger generation, like, is there a way that you can honor what dad or grandpa is saying here as you do carry forth into your generation?
right. And another question I like to ask is, what do you want your relationship to the farm to be as you continue to age in place on this farm or
Right.
transition to the next generation, right? What are the outcomes that would make your heart sing and that you'd be really happy that
Mhm.
things had transitioned well?
Yeah.
How do you get as a therapist, Colleen, how do you get people to speak what hasn't been spoken yet?
Well, we start very slowly. And I think too, for many of them, it's giving them permission. Like
Mhm.
it's okay to say what you're feeling right now. So many of us grew up with that, I guess, rule of
Unhelpful?
yes, exactly. It was everything's private. Nobody needs to know our family business. It just hush hush. And I mean, I joke about it now, but we were never asked, what we were feeling about anything. That just wasn't a thing back in the 80s, right? And what a disservice, because now here we are, so many of us adults that struggle with having those difficult conversations because we were never
Mhm.
taught, we were never modeled or allowed. And so a lot of that too is like teaching families it doesn't have to be conflict. It can certainly be a hard conversation, but it doesn't have to turn into conflict.
Right.
You know, it's so foreign.
So you're both a clinician and a third generation farmer. So how does that shape your approach?
Well, I think it makes me like I get it. I really understand what um these farmers are looking at and experiencing when they think about stepping away. Our family farm has been in the family since the late 1800s. And
Mhm.
I just think, I mean, considering everything that, has happened in the world, it's pretty amazing that my brothers are still on that piece of land. And I think there's a lot to be proud of. And I can definitely get it where you don't want to turn it over. I can see where that would be hard. And so I hope it makes me credible that if people do decide to work with me, that I know what I'm talking about. I see it. I've experienced it. I've been beside people as they make the decisions. So I think it makes me more empathetic too.
Mhm. And South Dakota is a pretty big state. I've had the honor of working with the South Dakota Farm Bureau in many different
Hmm.
parts of your state.
Yep.
Do you think farm families need to see a therapist or a clinician face to face, or can we do good work like we're doing today on the podcast through a Zoom
Oh,
kind of
I mean,
idea?
I think you can definitely do good work through telehealth. It has
Uh-huh.
been a bittersweet learning experience. I am not a very tech savvy person, but in 20 when COVID hit, I had to learn. I had to figure it out. And now that I can at least get my way around, it's pretty easy. And it really does help in a bind. Like I have people who, can't leave their farm, or if they're
Right.
working in town, they'll go slip out into their vehicle on a lunch break and will run the session through their smartphone. And so
Yeah.
there is a very big convenience factor.
And do you like to work with the whole family, farm and non-farm, Colleen? Like how in our coaching practice, we like to work with all the players because we don't want there to be any assumptions made
Hmm.
or guessing, and we want to be really clear about expectations. And I've always said, and I'll put it on online for this podcast too, our directive is counseling is about recovery, but coaching is about discovery. And I think you, with your approach, can do almost both of those things. But definitely on the therapeutic side, you have more tools in your box.
Oh, I do have more tools in my box. It just kind of depends upon what I'm going to come up against within the family. The other piece to that puzzle is stigma is so very big yet in these small rural communities. And so I'm learning that I have to adjust my language a little bit because really mental health does those two words scare people.
Ah, still, you think?
Yes, and so I
Mhm.
am stepping outside of the box and trying to do more public speaking so that I can educate people more about mental health. It's a subject matter that the majority of us are going to experience in our lifetime.
Yep.
Um, Nobody's immune from it. I think statistics are 1 in 5.
Hi, folks. We're just going to do a little bit of a rewind here. Apparently, my surge protector decided to go a little bit crazy. So, Colleen, I'd like to rewind you back to your comment about there's still stigma about mental health, and what you think a good approach is for farm families to destigmatize the fact, and especially when we talk about therapy, about dealing with recovering from things in your past, and also the dynamic of the family that may be highly emotional charged, but
Mhm.
also the fact that you know, having mental illness challenges in transition planning is also a thing because there can be depression, which causes irrational
Mhm.
thinking. There can
Yeah.
be workaholism that is a kind of addictive behavior that's not helpful. I'm sure you've seen all kinds of different side swipes to the family making good progress because they have to deal
Right.
with their emotional well-being.
Mhm. Stigma is still very huge in these small rural communities, and I didn't realize that until I moved back. Um, I really had hoped that we had made better progress, and so that just tells me we have more work to do. We, as people who work in the profession, I think, have to find ways to incorporate language that maybe doesn't seem so scary when we're talking about
Mhm.
it. I think we have to be able to normalize when we do have depressive or anxious symptoms. And I think just getting out there and spreading the word, which is what I'm trying to do with some public speaking and doing these podcasts. Nobody is immune from a mental health issue. um, I think the statistics are 1 in 5 adults will
Yes.
face some kind of an issue, and so it's very normal, and so if we can get ahead of that fear and learn a little bit more about it, and I think too with clinicians and people like myself being more open and, sharing about what the experience looks like, that will maybe help. Um, as far as, like, dynamics within the family that might be around, a disorder, depression, anxiety, maybe there's some PTSD from a farm accident, or maybe there's an active substance abuse issue. Those have to be addressed before you can move forward with any kind of a transition plan, and that's what I can
Absolutely.
assist in. Mhm.
Nope, that's great. And the podcast that will follow this one was with Dr. Merle Massey from the Do More Ag
Oh, yeah.
Foundation, and we'll do a lot of speaking too. Yeah, and lots of great resources there as well. So, Colleen, when
Wonderful.
you get set up with your office back at the ranch, so to speak,
Yep.
will that also give people privacy to come and see you at your office at the farm so
Yes.
that no one can see whose car or truck is parked out in front of the office there in town?
Yep, exactly. Yep, that's part of why I'm
Mm,
doing it. The other part is I want to create a safe place where they really feel comfortable. And for me, that safe place is being out in the country with my
mm.
animals, in nature. I'm digging in the dirt or I'm brushing the horses. I want to get some walking paths carved in our trees. And so it will be private, it will be secluded. And I want it to be um, calming for them and comfortable.
So, so if I came to you as a very distressed, upset mother-in-law who is tired of being the monkey in the middle with this whole transition
Mm.
process because one player is coming into this year and my spouse is coming into this year, how would you work with me? How long would it take to get me in an even keel and with good skills to deal with the emotional upheaval of being in the middle of a succession plan?
Was there anything else going on? Was there any
Yeah, I would
diagnosis?
say just the aging thing. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm giving you a scenario because I've had many women say, "Elena, I'm just so tired of doing this alone. No one else seems to care about the transition as much as I
Mhm.
do. Everyone else says they're too busy." So I guess my question is, Colleen, is how do you create a sense of urgency for healing and for wholeness through therapy, and ag-informed therapy to help people have the resilience that they need to keep moving a family dynamic forward?
Well, I happen to be working with a family like that as we speak. So I'm being a little I don't wanna say pushy. I'm being a little more intentional with keeping them on the
Accountable?
schedule. Yep,
Yep.
accountable. Um, uh, they first made contact with me last August, and I just got them into my office in January. So, and I get it, I understand, but I'm on my 3rd meeting and I've met the kids, and so now I'm coming up with a plan, um, and I think that I need to work more so with the older generation. I think that's where I need to really focus my energy and my time. And as far as, like that mom, I think I need to also help teach her um, a way that she can maybe put some boundaries up. Like, I'm not going to allow this anymore.
Yeah.
And she's going to have to learn some other communication methods so that she can disengage and, maybe part two, I always kind of use that example, like, if you change your behaviors, the other ones are gonna kinda have to be forced to do something different because you're not playing by the rules that they know. And so that's kinda where I start with that type of an issue.
And I think it's helpful if people understand too that change is inevitable, but growth is
Mm,
optional. So
mhm.
change will always continue around us in farm families and in our farm businesses.
Yep.
But what we learn about that and how I think your other tool as a therapist, Colleen, is to help them see frameworks or different ways of being and
Mhm,
especially changing their language. So just
mhm.
as we sort of wrap up here, what are some of the most powerful one-liners that you give to your clients to help them be better communicators or navigate some of those hard conversations with
Well,
with with healthy emotions?
yep, with healthy emotions, a lot of the times, I have a hard time keeping it to one-liners, but,
Okay,
sometimes it's okay to walk away, but you have to let the other person know what you're doing, you can't just walk away. So, preface that, like, "Hey, if I ever walk away during a conversation, it's because I have to go catch my breath, and I wanna just take a minute to calm down so that I don't say something I don't regret." So, like, that would be something I recommend a lot. I also recommend, like, when you have to have that hard conversation, to not place blame or accusations, to always, always, always back those statements up with how you feel. So, I feel really frustrated when you don't include me in the transition process. I need you to, like, you be very specific and base it on your feelings. That lowers our defensiveness that could come back around. Um, and then I try too, like if people feel stuck and they just don't know where they want to move, I ask them to think about what is it that you'd like to see your life look like in the next few years.
future casting.
And then you need to start doing one thing, one action every day that's going to get you closer to living that dream or that image of what you want.
Mhm.
Um, so I mean, those are just a few things, but communication is the hardest. Identifying feelings and communication, those are the hardest.
And also, I think you in your a little while back, you also used the word permission. And
Yes.
asking the other person, do you want my opinion or not? Or
Mm,
what do you want me to do differently? And you're taking personal
yes.
responsibility for
Yes.
how you want things to shift. And I often say love does not read minds, but there's so many times in farming we get into these habits and patterns and
Mhm.
how you do your barn chores or how you always set the machines or how
Right?
you put your boots on in the morning, whatever it is. We have lots of different patterns and habits that are so deeply ingrained we don't even know they're there.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you kinda get on autopilot too when you've done this for how many years.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
So, Colleen, as we get closer to the end here, I'm curious, what would you counsel families to do for fun or to bring them back to um, an alignment, I would call it, or a connection where they feel that
Mm,
now they're in a safe space they understand what it means to speak respectfully, and they also understand what it means to be able to express their emotions, their feelings, and what they truly want.
Um,
How can they celebrate that?
well, I think we definitely have to get back to family dinners, family meals. Those, in my opinion, those went away or we don't get them very often, and those need to be a
Mm,
staple again. And you need to keep the business side out of the family dinner. It needs to be just focused on the family and the meal and everything else that comes with it. I think check-ins would be good. So I don't know. Like for myself, I have someone working with me right now and we do a weekly check-in. And I suggest oftentimes for spouses that maybe are having some struggles with communication to have a weekly
mm,
check-in with each other. So you kind of know what's on the horizon, what's coming. Maybe your spouse has a hard week. And I think those are very helpful. Um, Not only like in meeting expectations, but also not assuming, right? If something doesn't go right or maybe the behavior is off and you're wondering, did something happen? Did I do something? They're not talking. If you kind of have these check-ins every week or every 2 weeks, then you're going to be more in tune to each other. And I think that might help prevent some of those
mhm.
miscommunications that come up.
We're and in terms of keeping the transition process moving too, we talk about the difference between an operational meeting and a strategic meeting. So a check-in even for a farm business to know
Hmm.
what the agenda is and to know who needs to show up and who needs to be there.
Exactly.
I also totally align with what you say, excuse me, about family dinners because something I think transformational happens when people gather around a table
Hmm.
and break bread together. And I understand that we've lost the gift of hospitality, I think, in some ways, even with our
Yeah,
neighbors or our closest loved ones.
absolutely.
It doesn't have to be. I mean, I remember my mom doing fried bologna when that was all that she had left. And, and she'd put the table would be set nicely.
Yep,
Yeah, it wasn't a roast beef or a steak, but it was people getting together and there was usually typically a really
exactly.
good dessert to finish things off. But
Exactly.
I wonder I wonder if people really understand the power of sitting down with each other.
Mhm.
And I think the other thing that's important that you mentioned is no shop talk. We're not talking about the farm business around this table. And if it
Exactly.
starts going that way, you have some kind of squeezing of the knee or
Yep.
or time out,
Yep.
some way of keeping boundaries around. We're here to celebrate being a family, and that's the domain we're sitting in around this
Hmm.
table. We'll sit in the business domain when we go to the office or go to
Right.
the boardroom or another spot to talk about operations and strategic planning.
Mhm. Those were some of my most favorite memories growing up was the Sunday dinners because everybody, I mean, almost everybody was there almost every Sunday, and it didn't matter, like you said, it didn't matter what was for dinner. It was just that we were together. And
Yeah,
despite the dysfunction, despite the issues, we still came together as a family, and to
right.
me, that was the best part.
So I have another question that brought to mind is I heard a stat recently that 26% of families are suffering some form of estrangement. And in succession and transition planning, I'm
Mhm.
also seeing this happening where people are removing themselves, like
Yes.
physically, emotionally, communication wise, in all dimensions, removing themselves from the family because they're not getting what they think they deserve or what they're entitled to or what they want. Are you recognizing this as something that you didn't see before that now you're starting to see?
I have seen a couple examples of it, and truthfully, I've not encountered that before, and it breaks my heart because it's
Mm,
severing the family, and it's almost like you have sides, and I I have the grandparents in here who are crying and tearing up, and this is not what we wanted, and boy, that's a hard line to make sense of.
right. Yeah.
Um,
And I'll
yeah.
just put it in the show notes too. I was curious because Lance Woodbury has written on it on a couple of things, and I have a couple of his PDFs with Josh Coleman's book, The Rules of Estrangement. and another
Mhm.
book called Fault Lines: How to Mend a Fragmented Family. And I would say for those of you listening to this who are worried or concerned about the lack of the ability to share feelings and talk about what's really going on, that you have a choice to get yourself in front of someone like you, Colleen, who's an ag-informed therapist, to learn how to talk things out and work on some new coping skills and better communication strategies. Or you have a choice just to kind of say, oh, I hope it works out, which I think is such a conflict avoidance and procrastination
Mhm.
move that way too many farmers default to. So, of all the things that we've talked about today, what's the main message you would like to get out to farm families as they're wanting to be healthy emotionally and navigate all the emotions of dealing with a farm transition process? How
Mhm.
do you think you can help them the most?
I think it's never too late to get things on the right track, and it's never too early to start thinking about what that legacy means to you and what you want
Uh,
to leave behind. I think the sooner you start that process, and I also think the sooner that you work on fixing whatever it is that might be going on within the family, whether it's communication or something, there's always hope,
hmm.
and I like to be a part of that.
And so, what gives you hope in your work?
Uh, the people who come in and do the work. It's not easy
Mm,
work,
mm,
but they want to see things change. They don't wanna see this carry over into their grandchildren's generation.
yeah.
Yeah, so
And
that gives me hope.
the cycle must be broken, right?
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, or the habits need to shift to a better direction. Well,
Yeah.
folks, thanks for spending a good chunk of your time with us in your day today on this podcast. Colleen can be found at Colleen at Embracing Change, and then two letters cs.com. And I want to wish you well as you build your new office in the country. And I'm really glad, Colleen, that you've come home, because I
Thank you.
think your brothers are going to be really happy to have you closer by too. And
I hope
folks,
so.
remember, yes, that'll be good. Remember, we have tons of resources on the website at farmfamilycoach.com. Please share this podcast far and wide, and excuse the beeping noises today and my little raspy voice, but that happens when we talk a lot and you catch sinus infections along the way. So I hope everybody stays well. And remember that reaching out is a very positive conflict behavior. So reach out to a therapist if you think that today's conversation has kind of twigged your imagination and expectation around how an ag-informed therapist can help you. Also in Canada, we have the National Farmers Mental Health Alliance, and I'm pretty sure that Colleen would be happy to have a discovery call with you just to check out how working with her might work, and how you might want to do that from your pickup truck. You never know. Thanks for coming today, folks. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.